The Pinegrow Design panel provides a central location for you to set a number of base stylings for all of the pages in your project. You can customize your Tailwind CSS theme without editing config files or setting up complicated compilers. This allows you to quickly modify and compare design changes throughout your whole project. For the Tailwind framework, these include available color palettes, fonts, background, and just-in-time compiler options. Let's take a walk through and see what powers this gives us. Note that the design panel is also available for Bootstrap projects. The documentation for it is linked in the written tutorial. To start with, let's open a new Tailwind template. I'm going to go to New Page or Project. I'm going to select the Tailwind CSS blocks, although we could select either a Tailwind or a Tailwind UI project. Then I'm going to scroll down and select the directory. The design panel only works with projects, so make sure that you reopen your page after saving as a project. To add the design panel, we simply go to the tab marked with the little palette icon and click on the Activate button. That will go ahead and add all of our different design elements within the design panel. Let's go ahead and save and reload the project. You'll notice now that you have a theme folder named Tailwind Theme, and within that theme folder, there's a file, tailwind.css, that contains all of the stylings for the project, including changes made from the design panel. By default, the Tailwind CSS just-in-time compiler is activated and will only add the rule sets needed for your project to this page. Now let's look at some of the sections in the design panel. After activation of the design panel, you will see 4 categories of theme changes that can be made, as well as a section at the very bottom of the panel with a list of saved designs, a tool toggle, and the very special Surprise Me button. Let's walk through each. The Tailwind templates come standard with 8 different colors, each having 10 shades. Any of these colors can be edited by simply clicking on the color and then selecting a new color from the picker or with the input box. So you can pick here or down here. Pinegrow will automatically create the 10 shades of new color. Right-clicking on the color or clicking on the caret at the right will bring up a context menu with 3 choices: Edit shades, rename color, or delete color. Now be careful. If you're starting from scratch, you can do whatever you want. But if you already have a design in progress, making a change to the color name or deleting a color will change the style sheet, but will not make any changes to your HTML. So we do not recommend you delete or rename a color when you already have a project underway, as this could leave some elements unstyled. Clicking on the Edit Shades item will bring up a new modal. At the top of this modal are some instructions for adding in new shades. Each shade is made up of a name and a color value. In this example, the shade names are numbers and will generate CSS class names like text-purple-300. But you could easily change these shades to actual names like light or dark. There are 2 ways to define shade colors. The first is to enter an exact color as an RGBA, RGB, or hex value. That's what you can see here. The second way is to allow Pinegrow to define the shade by leaving the color value blank. You can also add additional shades to the list either as exact color values or Pinegrow calculated values. For example, if we wanted one between 500 and 600, we'd simply add a return here, add a number for the name, and then a value. And we can see that now we have a new shade of purple in between the others. You can also add new colors into your palette. Clicking on the plus icon will open a new modal. In this modal, there are 3 inputs. The first is a new name for your color. This name can only contain letters, numbers, or an underscore. The next input is for your base color. You can either enter a value, RGB, RGBA, or hex, or use the color picker. Finally, the last input accepts a list of shade names separated by commas. The names can only contain letters and numbers. Pinegrow will automatically assign shades based on the number of different shade names, starting with the lightest shade being assigned to the first name, the darkest to the last name, and the base color to the middle name. Once assigned, you can go into the shade editor and adjust them if you don't like the automatically assigned colors. You can also repopulate the colors to fit with an on-page image, such as the main hero image or any element with a background. To accomplish this, just select the image or element with the background in either the page view or the tree. So for example, if we wanted to get colors from this image, we could switch over to the tree, select it, then go back to our guide and hit Get from Selected Image. Now you notice here, the only color that changed is our bright, and that's because all of the other colors are currently locked. This is good form if you already have a project in progress so that you don't inadvertently change something that you've used previously. The locks are also there for the surprise section that we'll cover later. Any of the colors can be swapped simply by dragging one onto the other. You can also duplicate a color if you wish by holding down either the Alt or the Option key and then dragging. But be aware that this is going to overwrite the last color. And if you're using literal color names like pink, this sometimes might not make sense. Luckily, this can be undone if necessary. So for example, we can go up to the edit, click undo, and it will restore our pink back to its normal color. The other option that you have, if you have color changes that you want to revert, is to select the down caret, and then from the context menu, restore default colors. So note, this is only going to have impact on the original 8 colors of Tailwind and their shades. So basically, if we had swapped this gray and red and now don't care for that, we can restore default colors. Any new colors or shades that have been added to the design palette will not be impacted by clicking on the Restore Default Colors. One quick thing that I want to point out. You may have noticed that as we made changes in the design, like this swap, it had immediate impact on the page view. If you are running browser sync, this would also have impact and update your external web page. Let's set that back. And let's move on to the next section. The next section of the Tailwind design panel allows you to both set the base fonts used throughout your project, but also add additional fonts. Tailwind supports 3 font types in any base project: sans, serif, and mono. The actual font used for each is dependent on what system fonts are installed. The design panel allows you to easily assign specific fonts for both the font-sans class and the font-serif classes by clicking on the drop-down input for each and selecting a font from the list. Note that each of these families has a lock. I'll save what these are for until the surprise at the end. So in addition to setting a base font for each one, you can also elect to add this font automatically to specific heading tags without having to add the specific class. So for example, if we always wanted our H1 to use Arvo, we could simply click here, and you can see that it's now applied. Note, you can still add any font to text within your pages through the Style panel. So for example, if you want some decorative text on one word or a paragraph, setting the fonts in the Design panel won't interfere with this. The drop-downs are already populated with a large number of popular fonts. However, if you want to use an unlisted Google font or a custom font file, you can click on the Manage Fonts button, which is located here, or select from the bottom of the drop-down list, Manage Fonts. Clicking either of these will cause a font library modal to appear. In addition to adding fonts, this control panel will also allow you to remove fonts from the drop-downs by clicking the Remove at the end. The Use For column isn't really used in the Tailwind Design panel and can be ignored. In order to add a new unlisted font, scroll to the very bottom of this control panel, and there you'll find a button. When you click that button, it will bring up a context menu, and this will allow you to load in either additional system fonts, Google fonts, project-specific fonts, or either local or typekit, or import from any URL. If you removed fonts and you want to put them back, you can click on the Add Default Fonts. And if you find that the list of fonts to select from is far too long, you can select Remove All and then add specific fonts back to give a custom list. So you can also add a new font family for use on your pages. To do that, you click on the Add Font Family button, and you'll get a new input box. Into that input box, you put the font name that you want to use, and then select whatever family you wish to associate with that name. And again, you can elect to use this on specific headings. So now we can see if we open our floating tools by double-clicking the Shift key, that now if we have a section of text selected, that we can open up our font menu and select our newly added font to that particular piece of text. Okay, let's move on to the next section. The background section has a few different uses. Firstly, the color input is populated from the theme colors set in the first section of the design panel. Selecting a color here will add it as a background color for all the pages in your project. So we can see if we click in the input box, all of our standard Tailwind colors and their shades are there, as well as our newly added color. Secondly, you can do the same thing with an image. Clicking on the folder allows you to select an image file from your project or retrieve a file from Unsplash. So what you can appreciate, I hope, is that clicking on that actually didn't change anything on our page. That's because by default, an image isn't used to set a background, but for the surprise at the end. In the next set of controls, we will see how to use this image as a background or to replace any image on the screen. Opening the image options reveals an additional set of controls. By default, the top checkbox, Only use the image for colors, is ticked. The other two controls in this section, Source and Query, will be covered at the end. To use the image as a project-wide background, simply untick the checkbox. So now we can see that that image is being used as a background on our page. You'll also notice that some new input boxes appeared. The first one, Selector, is the one that tells Pinegrow to use this particular image as a background for the entire body. We can change that. So for example, in this particular template, being able to change our main hero image would be great. The one thing to keep in mind with this section is that the image is added as a background image. So it won't replace an existing image on the page, only a background. So let's see how we can use that to change this hero image. So if we kind of select that, go to the tree, we can see that right now this image is being added as an actual image. So what we're going to have to do is remove that, then select the section. Then let's give a custom ID to that section. Let's go back to our design panel. Now we can change this selector to target it. Remember, because it's an ID, we need to prefix it with the hash. So now we can see anytime we change this photo, it will also change the hero image. You also have the option to set a different image for small and large screens through the other two inputs and the settings button. So here for small image, we can click, select a file from the local project or from Unsplash, same with the large image. These particular images will be displayed according to some media queries, and those media queries can be set by clicking on the settings button. That will pop up a new modal. The default media queries target screens less than 768 pixels for the small and larger than 1440 pic on a normal screen or retina screens larger than 992 pixels. You don't have to add both a small and a large image. You can elect to use only one, and then the image in the main background area will be used for all other sizes. The remainder of the background controls are for use with the final surprise, and we'll come back to them. The final section of the design panel for Tailwind is the Tailwind CSS options. Right now, the only thing that this contains is a way to set the just-in-time compiler options. The compiler is on by default, but can be turned off here. Basically, what it will do is ensure that the resulting style sheet contains only the rule sets that are needed within the page. Typically, there's no need to make changes or add a config file, and this will slim down your Tailwind CSS dramatically. The final section of the design panel is arguably the most exciting. While the top allows you to easily set up design parameters project-wide, the bottom section helps to wet your creative juices and to showcase your different design variants. Clicking on the Surprise Me button loads a random image into the background section. It also uses the same image to set up new colors. I've deleted out the custom color that we put in. If all your colors are locked and you don't have a custom color, Pinegrow will ask you to create new colors. If you do have unlocked custom colors, Pinegrow will repopulate those particular colors with colors from the image. Let's give it a try. So again, because all the colors were locked and we don't have any custom ones, Pinegrow asks if we want to create new ones. So we'll say yes. Pinegrow has now loaded a new background image in. Since we elected to have the hero image replaced, it's done so. And it's generated 4 new colors: primary, secondary, color 3, and color 4. All of the changes made in the page view will also be reflected and automatically update the open browser window if you have the browser sync option turned on. If some change occurs that you don't like, then you can hit the undo or redo hotkeys to move forward or back through your design changes. Remember all of the locks within the prior sections, both the colors and within the font section? If you find a combination that you like for one thing, but don't for another, you can just lock them. So happy with the color palette, not the fonts? Just lock what you like and hit the button again. If you right-click the Surprise Me button, you can access 2 additional options. Animate transitions, which normally is off, will cause every click of the Surprise Me button to go through a fade out and fade in. That way it's a little bit more like a slideshow. Similarly, right-clicking and selecting autoplay will cause the surprise me to re-trigger every X number of seconds. So for example here, every 5 seconds. If you like a design that you see during the slideshow, just click on the plus. When you're done, hit stop. Now, if you want, you can scroll through all of your saved designs. If you want to get rid of any designs, you can right-click on that design and select delete. If you like many things about a design but want to make one little tweak and see if it makes it better, you can duplicate that design and then go back and say change a font. The final part of the bottom section is the little palette icon. Clicking on this will cause your floating tools to reappear and come flying to your cursor. Overall, we hope that the design panel allows people to very quickly take a set of design specs, set up their whole project, and then once they get their project set up, be able to make small changes, save those designs, and be able to preview them easily for customers to decide which ones they like best.